Now for business updates across the globe, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Dr. Abati. Great conversation on the education sector in that prior segment. Very important. And you guys, as always, you press these guests hard. So, I hope all the assurances come out to lead to something in the education. He has assured us all. Look, we start with oil. Oil has seen some big drops over the last few days. Earlier, look at Brent crude, 74.72. West Texas jumping under $70. So, there's been a lot of concern around China and China's demand for oil. There's also, I think we just got data on U.S. gas inventories, and those inventories rose. So basically, it seems that the markets are saying, well, it looks like as far as inventory is concerned for the United States, they have enough. Look, with the elections that are coming up next year in the U.S., in the UK, in India, in South Africa, everywhere else, I think if you're an incumbent, maybe you want lower oil prices because of what happens to inflation and making things less expensive. So we'll see how things play out. But then there's also OPEC Plus and all the issues that they've had with respect to trying to get everyone to comply with the cuts. So you just saw a chart there on Russia while we're on the matter of oil. Look at Russia's oil revenue and how they've rebounded. This is what they've been making on a monthly basis. It just shows you the power of the Russian economy. So from $8 million in October of 2022, you can see a dip all the way through January through April of 2023 to 4.3 million, and then climbing rapidly to 11.3 million as of October. So we understand that Russia is avoiding sanctions that the West has placed on them. Russia is relying on these shadow vessels to be able to sell oil to your Indias and your Chinas and so on and so forth. And they've been able to rebound, and that's how they've been able to basically shirk these sanctions, right? This is a study done by Bloomberg. Now, the G7 has announced, there was a meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, I believe it was yesterday. But before I even get to that, sorry, while we're still on oil and gas, I was going to jump to the Russian diamonds. Have to give a shout out to Century Energy Services in Nigeria. So the company was listed, according to Blackridge Research and Consulting, in the top 20 for floating production service, FPSOs, right? These are floating vessels for oil storage and operations, right? So basically, they are a subsidiary of the Century Group. The Century Group is, of course, a de-risking oil and gas company, also in infrastructure. They've been operating, I think, since about 2002 in Nigeria and in the West African region. And so them being listed as that top 10 recognizes what they've contributed to oil and gas in Nigeria and the West African region, and being recognized globally. So that's, credit to them as far as that top 10, in fact, 9th basically by fleet size and overall top 20 for FSPOs. So that's in oil and gas. So now to, I was mentioning the China's, trade particularly. So we saw, it's a mixed picture for China's trade figures. If you look at exports climbing by 0.5%, the forecast was that they would contract. Imports contracted by 0.6%, and this is key because if your imports are falling, it shows that there is not much demand in your country for goods. You can see exports, though, to the USA up by 7% in value terms, but it was down in volume. EU exports, you can see a big drop of 14.5%. In fact, as we speak, I understand that Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel are meeting with Xi Jinping, I think in Beijing. So they are talking a lot about EU-China relations. And then as far as the ASEAN nations, the Association of Southeastern Asian Nations, exports dropping there as well. So now we've got another ban for Russia. So the G7 had a meeting yesterday with Zelensky, of course, president of Ukraine. They are going to put a ban on non-industrial diamonds from Russia effective January 2024. Then also third-party sales of Russian diamonds, that's going to go into effect March of 2024. The question is, are these bans effective because of what we've seen with oil? Russia, by the way, as much as I am I think I have my own thoughts on who Putin is as a person. The Russian economy is it's really strong, right? A 1.7 or 1.8 trillion dollar economy. These are their diamond exports in 2021, 4.7 billion. Russia is big in oil, they're big in gas, they're big in diamonds, they're big in wheat. So the fact that they're a diversified economy has allowed them to to a certain extent, to be able to shrink these sanctions that have been put on them by the West. But do you guys think that they're going to continue to escape these sanctions, or what are your thoughts as far as what's been going on?
Well, what we're seeing so far is that, look, we expressed the skepticism when the attempt was made to impose ban on Russia, and we said, look, these bans oftentimes do not work based on past experience. And you see, Vladimir Putin continuing to defy the world. As you speak, this morning, he arrived yesterday in the UAE to attend the COP28. Now, the reason he's able to go to the UAE is that the UAE is not, a signatory to the Treaty on the International Criminal Court.
Right.
And so he will go there and go back, and he will make speeches there. So just showing that, look, we can defy you. Despite all the companies that have withdrawn from Russia, Russia continues to go strong. And, his defiance of the world, is a source of embarrassment, really, to the West. But what we were told by Eric Kissinger and others, and Macron, is that, isolating Russia will not, on the long term, be of benefit to the international economy. So some of these steps taken by either the EU, the G7, or the United States, they are grand gestures, okay, just to remind Russia of the threat that it poses to global peace, which is acts of aggression, particularly as we have seen for for almost 2 years now in Ukraine.
But my thing here is, and Dr. Ayo, is there not something to be said for the strength of the Russian economy? That you've got oil, you've got gas, they export natural gas to Europe, you've got wheat, Egypt depends on their wheat, Nigeria, Africa, then you've got diamonds, you've got all these things. That's my thing, where I'm coming from, that they've got such a strong economy, and the lessons in what a diversified economy gives
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. I think it's also the way they're able to bypass many of these sanctions and the alliances with countries like China, and like you've mentioned, like talked about being able to attend the UAE's hosted COP28. But let me expand on the diamond issue. Now, the challenge with this particular sanction is that they export to countries like India. India receives the diamond because this is not the first time. The US has banned their diamonds last year, so they're just following after. So many Western countries are following suit, trying to ban Russian diamonds. Now, when they go to India, they are processed and then re-exported.
Right.
Then it is difficult to trace whether they originated from Russia. So they've been, and we've seen that with other produce or other areas where they've been sanctioned, where they go through friendly countries or allied countries, and then it's processed and then re-exported, so they're still able to gain some form of revenue. Now, what has been said is that maybe to match their intelligence in terms of being able to bypass these processes by, for instance, they've asked for maybe a 3D scan and finding a way to put inscriptions on diamonds from Russia so that it's effective. Because at the end of the day, these sanctions don't seem to be working because they don't seem to be effective. Yeah. They're still able to export their oil to friendly nations. They're still able to, the gold ban as well, they're still able to find their way around it. And then, of course, let's not also forget the impact of the Israeli conflict. It has taken a bit of attention away, not a bit actually, quite significant attention away from the Russian-Ukraine war. Even Zelensky had come out to say that it seems like the world is forgetting about Ukraine following the war. So we will look at this. It seems as if after a while they've woken up and now imposed another sanction. But sanction after sanction, the Russian economy, like you said, has been able to withstand it and been clever in still being able to send their exports. I also must emphasize the importance of alliance and relationships, just as with individuals, countries as well in diplomacy. You are strong as your alliances, and that's why you see the US the US is everywhere. They know how, who to form alliance with. They know. So I think that's also something for us, a learning point for me, and also for the African continent. One thing I would talk about a lot is the fact that there's no cohesion when it comes to, friendliness, amongst nations on the African continent. So I think beyond the strength of their economy is also the strength of their diplomacy in terms of whom they formed alliance with. If not for the alliances that they have, the sanctions would have worked harder.
Gotcha.
Would have worked harder.
The point to note, though, is that yes, the sanctions may have had an impact, because if you had no sanctions, the Russian economy will have grown much faster. GDP growth, for example, has declined. But it's just that with all the sanctions, 11 alone from Europe, I think the Russians, they managed to adapt to the sanctions, and that's what gives them the confidence to continue to, be aggressive. Yes, that's where the challenge is.
Are you guys buying diamonds this for Christmas?
If I get a gift of diamonds, I won't say no.
We go to the United States. Wall Street was at the U.S. Senate hearing yesterday. They resumed their annual Senate hearing. So you can see Jamie Dimon of JPM Chair CEO of course, David Solomon of Goldman Sachs, James Gorman of Morgan Stanley. Thankfully, there's a woman there, Jane Fraser of Citigroup, and of course, Brian Moynihan of Bank of America. So they faced the Senate talking about a number of issues in the country, credits to the real sector, credit card interest rates, and so mortgage rates, and so on and so forth. But there was a particular, you can trust Dimon, Jamie Dimon effectively came out, and we're going to hear him in a second, and said that cryptocurrency should be outright banned. I would love to get your reactions to what he said. Here he is.
I've always been deeply opposed to crypto, Bitcoin, etc. You pointed out the only true use case for it is criminals, drug traffickers, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance, and that is a use case because it is somewhat anonymous, not fully, and because you can move money instantaneously, and because it doesn't go through, as you mentioned, all these systems that have built up over many years, know your customers, sanctions, OFAC, they can bypass all of that. If I was the governments, I'd close it down.
So that's somebody in the private sector effectively telling governments that they said, and you saw Senator Elizabeth Warren nodding her head. She's been a hawk on crypto for so long. What do you guys think?
There are many who are skeptical about cryptocurrency, particularly because of its volatility, unpredictability. But Jamie Dimon is saying this at a time when cryptocurrency, I think about a week ago, was about $40,000. Now it's gone up to $44,000. The expectation is that by December it will be $50,000. And industry experts are saying that next year it could hit $100,000. There are countries who have even adopted cryptocurrency. And part of the developments that we have seen, in the stock market and with other sectors of the global economy is out of the expectation that they're going to get ETF approval, even in the same United States where Jamie Dimon, is talking, with the issues with FTX and Binance having been resolved and clearing the path for further, developments in that particular area. So Jamie Dimon says, well, this is for money launderers, it's for criminals. I don't know whether that is labeling, because it's not true that all the people who trade in cryptocurrency are drug lords or, criminals or money launderers or speculators. Well, a bit of speculators. But it says people who want to avoid tax. Well, but the whole thing is about regulation. And that's what either in the EU and in other countries, Singapore, I once cited the example of Singapore Monetary Authority, coming up with new regulations, for cryptocurrency. And other countries are, going in that direction. So if regulation is strengthened, maybe the fears of the likes of Jamie Dimon, can be addressed.
I think the Sam Bankman-Fried case wouldn't help, or would perhaps lend more credence to what he's calling for. He's never been in support of crypto. He's always spoken out against it. He said it's hyped up, it's a fraud, it's a pet project, and he's really kicked against it. As has been said, perhaps the big issue is around the being able to monitor or legislation around it, and being able to, the fact that they don't have control over the crypto industry, that is the big concern for a lot of lawmakers in the United States, and of course bank bosses like Diamond. However, the question is, are they going to ever do away with crypto? I doubt it very much. I doubt it very much. You can make calls for this. It's not the first time. I doubt it very much because it's, despite even the Bankman conviction, it still has seen, it's grown, it's strengthened, and it doesn't seem any time that it would be going away. Yes, I do agree that there does need to be some form of the word I'm looking for is
more regulation.
Regulation is the word, yes. And I believe that countries have grappled with this and not been able to find that, being able to regulate it. But it's as wild as the internet. It's like trying to regulate social media, like they try to do it. It's almost impossible. Yeah. But they'll need to keep making steps and finding ways to at least find regulations and protect interests in this case.
So, by the way, there was one other topic you brought up about the declining prices of oil.
Yes.
WTI,
yes,
declining by about 4.6%.
Yes.
Brent crude, February contract going down by about 3.76%, so on the average, 4%, which is contrary to the expectation after the OPEC Plus meeting, where OPEC decided they're going to sustain the 2.2 million barrels per day production cuts till the end of the first quarter of next year. And other countries promising cuts, including Russia, Venezuela, not Venezuela, and other countries. Yeah. Now, the question is, what is the effect of this? Yeah. Because the expectation is that prices will go up, but those prices have not gone up. Yeah. Yeah. But the part that worries me here is that our budget 2024. I think the benchmark is 77.86
That's right.
dollars or something like that. Let's just say $78 per barrel. Right. That's the expectation of Nigeria. Now, oil price is hovering around 74. Right. So I know the price is volatile, but if next year it goes further down, and as we pointed out yesterday, the foreign goods import and export report that you gave, right? The bulk of the improvement in Q3 was oil. Yeah. So if we don't get good revenues from oil, then the whole of that 2024 budget will just depend solely on borrowings. Exactly. And would have turned full circle. Exactly. And which goes back to your point about the need to diversify the economy.
Like Russia.
So that we're not just oil dependent. Now, this argument about depending solely on oil, we have been on it for like 3 decades. Every time, we must diversify the economy. Every government comes along, when is this economy going to be diversified?
That's it. Doctor, great question. Okay, so we're talking about banks in the US now. So a bank in Nigeria, FBN Holdings, milestone for the bank yesterday on the NGX, crossing #1 trillion in market capitalization, basically multiplying the number of shares outstanding times the share price, giving you your market cap, so value. So that's as of yesterday, December the 6th. So again, I think one of the stories of 2023 is probably going to be Femi Otedola, from, Gary Gould to with his bromance with Tony Lumilo and Transcorp, shares rising there, and then also the share tussle with ownership for FVN Holdings. So again, 1.1 trillion there. If we look at the club, the membership, the 1 trillion or the trillion naira membership club, it's grown now. So you've got Airtel Africa at 6.6 trillion. Again, these are valuations as of yesterday when the market closed. So Airtel Africa 6.6 trillion naira, Dangote Cement 5.5, MTN Nigeria 4.9, Boa Foods at 3.6, Boa Cement 3.3, Seplat Energy 1.4 trillion, GTCO 1.2, Zenith and FPN Holdings at 1.1. So some growth, right? But there's something that needs to be said here, and the dollar value of the exchange, because if I was to convert this to dollars, it's going to be a different story. So if we take a look at the NGX, right, in terms of its market cap back in 2022 and where we are today. So the all-share index closed at 51,251 points at the end of 2022. It was up by 19.9%, basically 20%, right? The market capitalization, if you take all the stocks on the exchange and multiply all of them by their share prices, you get a market cap of 27.9 trillion. Now, I used an exchange rate of 448 to end 2022. That gave me $62 billion to this value of the exchange. Now, if you come to yesterday, December the 6th, look at the all-share index. It was 71,808 points. The Nigerian Stock Exchange as of yesterday is up 40%, basically double in year-to-date, basically double in valuations, or rather, year-to-date. So 40% year-to-date versus 19.9%. So basically double where we were in 2022. However, look at the market cap. The market cap is 39.2 trillion as of yesterday, almost 40 trillion. Compared to 27.9 trillion in 2022. However, when you convert the NAFEX rate closed at, I think, 951 naira 22 kobo to the dollar. You divide that 39.2 trillion by 951, you get a dollar market cap of $41.3 billion. So much less, about 33% less than where we were in 2022. So these are not dollar returns. I'm just talking about the value of the markets and how the devaluation spreads across in terms of how it impacts the market. So it's something to be said. Now, I really do want to get your thoughts here on this particular topic. Procter Gamble dissolving their Nigeria ground operations. They pointed to macroeconomic headwinds. They're going to cease the pretty much local manufacturing. I understand that they've sold those factories to some other companies. They say they're going to do only an import-only business, just basically import items and then use distributors to spread them around. So here's their chief financial officer, Mr. Shutdown, I think is his name. He was speaking about I thought we had his quote here, but basically what he was saying was that the yes, we do have his quote, thankfully. Amen to that. So he said the other reality that arises in some of these markets is that it gets increasingly difficult to operate and create US dollar value. See, this is why I brought up the dollar value of the exchange. It gets increasingly difficult to operate and create US dollar value. So when you think about places like Nigeria and Argentina, where we've got Mr. Milei as the new leader there, it is difficult for us to operate because of the macroeconomic environment. So he then said they will now move to this import model. So again, GSK and so on and so forth, companies exiting. However, I think it's important to also highlight companies coming into Nigeria in addition to those that are exiting. So there's a pharmaceutical company from Japan. This was their breaking ground ceremony in Ogun State, Otsuka Pharmaceuticals Japan. It's a subsidiary of Otsuka Holdings. So Pocari Sweat is this drink that is supposed to replenish your electrolytes for folks that are, active. Yeah, I've seen they've been sending out their folks to supermarkets, gyms, and so on, and just telling people to try them out for free. So I guess that's them testing the ground. So they've chosen Ogun State for their groundbreaking, right? And if we look at some of the metrics behind what they are planning. The company, again, is a subsidiary of Otsuka Holdings, Inc., which is a company in Japan. It's a big multinational that is on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. So if you look at what its market value is on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, it's about 3.7 trillion yen. But if you convert that, it's at 147 yen to the dollar. It's about a $21 billion company, right? So it's pretty big. So they are planning on, they say they are making a $50 million investment in Nigeria, going to open up a factory in Ogun State. And I think they said their estimate is about 1,100 jobs is what they're going to end up with. So I guess that's you got companies exiting and companies coming in. That's the development there as far as those companies are concerned.
Well, P&G, living Nigeria, the CEO of P&G was speaking at a Morgan Stanley forum.
Yes.
And he said that what they have tried to do is to restructure the business, to move out of those difficult business environments. And he cited Nigeria and Argentina as two countries. And that in the case of Nigeria, it's very difficult to do business. Difficult business environment. He was very emphatical about that. And he said they are going to remove their footprint on the ground from Nigeria. And that's a very serious indictment. And he said if they pull out of Nigeria and Argentina, it's not in fact going to have any effect whatsoever on their balance sheet.
Yeah.
Okay, again, a very serious indictment. But the major issue is that this is a dollar-denominated country, and because it's dollar-denominated, it finds it difficult to function in Nigeria. You will recall that Emirates left here for a similar reason too, about being able to repatriate funds. In August, GSK, another pharmaceutical company, took the decision to shut down in Nigeria. Yeah. And now Proctor Gamble is following suit. With Proctor Gamble shutting down in Nigeria, we'll be losing about 5,000 jobs. And they have no plans to come back. Now, talking about forex backlog, the CBN of the Central Bank of Nigeria has a forex backlog of about $7 billion. Yeah. One of the things that the Central Bank under Cardoso has said is that they're going to find a way of clearing that backlog. Well, I don't know how quickly they can clear a backlog of $7 billion. The implication, therefore, is that as companies are leaving Nigeria, even the ones that are coming in, if they face similar challenges, they will also leave. Which is why it is so ironic that President Tinubu has been very active, very hardworking, going around looking for investors. But if we do not have a conducive, enabling environment in Nigeria, all that promise to potential investors that, oh, Nigeria is the best place for you to come and invest, will just be mere rhetoric. Because if they come here, business will go to where they can make profit, right? Where they think that the environment is conducive enough. So if you have if you are a dollar-denominated business and you are in Nigeria where the CBN cannot clear forex backlog and you can't even take your money out, then of course, why do you want to come and do business there? What it means is that the risk of doing business in Nigeria is very high. So what they have to do, what government has to do, from the example of GSK and P&G, is to reduce the risk for people who want to do business here. I thought under the Buhari administration, they used to quote ease of doing business as one of the major achievements. Why is it that all those achievements have disappeared in less than 8 months? The irony that we face.
Indeed.
It's really ironic. I mean, one of the things that we talk about when we see another trip to attract investors is that is Nigeria ready? Is it climate friendly for investors? And like Dr. Bate had mentioned, and I'm glad you put the two stories side by side so that while we're mourning the loss of another organization exiting Nigeria, we are welcoming we're welcoming another organization coming in. But Rotus, if we don't fix the challenges that face organizations, companies, the manufacturing sector in Nigeria, we'll keep having these kinds of exits. And so, for me, it's like a chicken and egg situation in terms of going to attract investors. Yes, we need their monies to come in so that we attract more FX, but are we able to sustain it? If we're not even looking at the FX challenges, some have left as a result of the power crisis. There are a number of issues bedeviling running the business in Nigeria, not just for small businesses, but now we see even for big organizations. We also have the security challenges that we keep talking about. That is not, our investors are watching the news. They are reading our body language. In fact, another area is also the political will of this government and the body language of this government in terms of savings. And it doesn't look good when we're looking at wastages. It almost seems as if we're not serious and ready for business. So, if we're going to spend a lot of time and money going abroad to attract investors, let us spend a lot of time and money to see how we can build infrastructure. Are we ever going to see improvements in the power sector in Nigeria? It is bleeding manufacturers. And then, unfortunately, there are some companies who cannot exit because this is where they belong. We need to speak up for them as well. There are companies that are closing in Nigeria. They might not be exiting. So when we look at the impact of this, think of the number of jobs that are lost. We're looking at the fact that there's an unemployment crisis and then we're seeing more companies exiting. Think of the effect on prices of goods. It's unfortunate. These are FMCGs as well. These are needed goods that are needed. We looked at some of the products from P&G. They are sanitary products that they produce. From GSK, look at cost of medicine. So it exacerbates the hardship of Nigerians in light of the other things that they had to grapple with. Not good at all and very disappointing, So if you look at the exit of GSK and P&G, and then look at Oshuka coming into Nigeria, the timing is not, because that would take a bit of time for them to settle in, invest. They just broke ground. So there's a long way to go. So I believe that the EBC, Steve Pebek, is still on, very much on ground. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole is still special advisor on ease of doing business. I'm hoping that they would be given the environment to work and really ensure that Nigeria becomes a productive place. Let's not forget also some other hidden issues. The corruption. If you speak to a number of multinationals, they'll tell you the fact that double billing, not being able to work in this climate because they have to settle some people. If not, they cannot get certain contracts.
In fact, I spoke with somebody who didn't want to be named. He works with P&G. He said that the corruption factor, the fact that there were folks that tried to extort money from them, and they refused. They're like, we're not doing it. We'd rather just leave.
And investments have been lost in Nigeria as a result of that. So, as in addition to creating an enabling business environment, we need to also clean up corruption. You see why we must continue to emphasize the fight against corruption, the fight against insecurity and other things. If we are going to attract investment, spend a lot of money going out there and say, come to Nigeria, bring your money, we must sort out the issues that are bedeviling businesses and running businesses in Nigeria.
Doctor, go ahead.
Osuka, that is setting up factory. The choice of Ogun State is very wise because Ogun State is the gateway to Nigeria. But what I don't understand when you showed that video, I saw bottled water on the screen. So they are coming to Nigeria to come and do bottled water.
Well, that's their entry point. The first, also, Pocari Sweat is like it's supposed. So, doctor, you exercise. You are an active
water
man.
And electrolyte.
Right. It's supposed to replace it. So it's supposed that's their entry. They're testing the market. So they're testing the market, and they've been now. So that's the point.
Because it's a 21 billion
company. That's the holding company.
Founded instructively also, I think, in 1921.
Exactly.
But to come and do water and electrolyte in Nigeria.
Well,
one of these days, they will bring people to come and produce a toothpick in this country. And we will say it's investment.
It's a great job.
Instead of importing it, let them come. It will create local jobs. Since we're not doing it, but the same issues that bedevil those who are producing water in Nigeria would possibly. And I don't want to discourage. I really want us. I'm welcoming that, congratulating Osuka. We want more businesses to come into Nigeria, create more jobs, bring money in, bring investments in. But also, we have to tell ourselves the truth as well.
Water and electrolyte, company that you two can set up if you put your mind to it. Thank you very much, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.